Good morning, Kyushu. Today we unveil a story of relentless firepower, strategic deception, and a devastating attack that changed everything in 1945. Imagine a convoy of nearly 60 trucks cautiously winding through a mist-shrouded mountain pass, believing they're safe from the relentless skies, until a thunderous roar signals the arrival of a deadly new threat. What if a single aircraft, armed with an astonishing 14 guns, firing nearly 12,000 rounds per minute, could obliterate an entire convoy in seconds? Could a fighter bomber, recently converted from aging bombers and equipped with a nose designed solely for destruction, turn the tide in the deadliest way possible? How did the Japanese forces, despite their clever defenses and hidden artillery, find themselves so helpless in the face of this aerial storm? And what secret strategies did the Americans employ to turn the skies into a battlefield of pure annihilation? All of these pieces, an unassuming supply route, a lethal attack aircraft, and a desperate convoy trapped in a narrow mountain pass, are part of one colossal puzzle. But the burning question remains: what was the true scale of this attack, and how did it reshape the face of warfare in the Pacific? In this video, we will trace every step of this devastating assault, separating fact from fiction, and revealing the shocking truth behind one of the most intense aerial strikes of the Second World War. The story begins now. Brace yourself for the unraveling of a battle that defined an era, as we dive straight into the chaos of that fateful dawn. Kyushu, Japan, on a humid morning in late July of the year 1945, precisely at 6 o'clock dawn, set the stage for a dramatic and devastating encounter. Lieutenant Colonel Takashi Yamamoto, in command of the 147th Transport Regiment, had no inkling that within moments, his convoy, comprising nearly 57 trucks transporting vital supplies of ammunition and rice, would be annihilated in a swift, brutal attack. This convoy was cautiously making its way along the narrow mountain pass nestled between the cities of Kagoshima and Miyazaki, a route that winded through rugged terrain, shrouded in a lingering morning mist. The line of rugged vehicles stretched for close to 2 kilometers through the stunning yet treacherous landscape, each vehicle loaded heavily, rattling softly as the convoy advanced. Yamamoto held a steadfast belief that the early hour, the barely visible pre-dawn shadows, would afford them some protection from the relentless assaults of American fighter bombers, aircraft that had been a persistent threat ever since the bloody fall of Okinawa 3 months prior. His convoy moved cautiously, with engines idling quietly, headlights turned off, and drivers maintaining just enough separation between their trucks, an unspoken strategy to prevent a single burst from exposing the entire column to deadly attack. Everything seemed under control in this fragile moment of relative calm, until the quiet was shattered by a deep, resonant drone reverberating through the mountain walls. Breaking the silence, the twin Pratt and Whitney R-2800 engines roared to life, echoing ominously off the steep cliffs that lined the valley. The source of this thunder was a Douglas A26B Invader, approaching rapidly at over 3,200 miles per hour, an aircraft belonging to the 319th Bombardment Group, specifically to its 438th Squadron. This formidable machine only recently arrived at Mashinado Airfield in Okinawa on the 21st of July, less than a week earlier, in the year of 1945, had been transferred from the South Carolina-based Columbia Army Air Base after being converted from aging B-26 Marauders into advanced attack bombers. The pilot steering this lethal aircraft was Captain James Mitchell, a seasoned aviator from Oklahoma. He had been repeatedly briefed on the alarming methods by which Japanese supply routes were now being operated. Most notably, roads in southern Kyushu, used at night and during the early dawn hours in a desperate attempt to escape the wrath of American bombing campaigns. Nearly all of the previous assaults had succeeded in destroying countless vehicles, grinding Japanese logistical operations to a halt, and inflicting significant damage across their island territory. What distinguished this particular morning, however, was not just the element of surprise, but the sheer firepower that Mitchell's Invader carried. An extraordinary concentration of weaponry designed specifically for devastating ground attacks. The aircraft was equipped with 8 powerful 25mm machine guns mounted in its nose, boasting a firing rate that ranged between 750 to 850 rounds per minute per gun. Additionally, its wings housed 6 more 50-caliber machine guns, further augmenting its lethality. When all 14 guns fired simultaneously, the aircraft could unleash a staggering combined rate of nearly 11,900 rounds per minute, a veritable storm of lead and firepower designed to obliterate anything in its path. At 6 o'clock 3 minutes, Lieutenant Colonel Yamamoto first noticed the ominous rumble in the air. Almost immediately, he issued a desperate command, ordering his drivers to halt and seek whatever cover they could find. However, the deadly narrowness of the mountain pass left them with no escape routes. Surrounded by rugged cliffs on either side, the convoy found itself caught in a deadly trap, a kill zone stretching exactly 2 kilometers. Over the past 3 years, Japanese forces had learned all too well that their best defense against overwhelming air power was to scatter and hide, hoping that the attacking aircraft would pass them by. But this morning's terrain, which had provided some concealment and protection in previous encounters, now turned into their worst enemy. Yamamoto observed in mounting horror as the formidable aircraft dove directly toward them in a fearless, destructive descent. The invader's engines flared as it plummeted from 8,000 feet to less than 500 in a matter of seconds, executing a brutal power dive that left no room for hesitation. Its nose was pointed straight ahead, locked onto the leading truck, an unassuming Type 94, loaded with a deadly cargo of 7,000 pounds of artillery shells destined for the coastal defense batteries at Miyazaki. This precise design of the A26B Invader, featuring a solid nose for maximum forward firepower, had been carefully engineered at Douglas Aircraft Company's Long Beach facility, tailored specifically for ground attack missions like this. The arrangement of the 8 guns inside the nose section was meticulously planned, allowing the aircraft to generate an intense concentration of fire directly ahead, perfectly suited for strafing runs aimed at softening up enemy positions or destroying vulnerable supply. Positioned in a precise vertical alignment along the very center line of the aircraft, 2 formidable machine guns were mounted, one above the other. This deliberate configuration, in conjunction with the innovative placement of 6 additional wing-mounted guns firing beyond the arc of the aircraft's propellers, endowed Captain Mitchell with the capability to unleash a veritable storm of gunfire, what American pilots often referred to as a wall of lead. This approach allowed him to deliver a ferocious, concentrated attack in a single pass, without the need to fly in extended circles or execute multiple passes, maneuvers which would have risked exposing him to enemy anti-aircraft fire from the ground. To bolster their defenses, the Japanese had strategically installed Type 96 25mm anti-aircraft guns at intervals of just a few kilometers along their main supply routes, ensuring coverage over vital logistical pathways. Yamamoto's convoy was no exception. It included 2 trucks each mounting these formidable artillery pieces. However, the gunners operating these weapons found their reaction window severely limited, less than 15 seconds from visual identification of the attacking aircraft to the moment it opened fire. At precisely 60 hours, 4 minutes, and 30 seconds, Captain Mitchell firmly pressed the trigger on his aircraft's control yoke. The result was immediate. All 14 of his and M2 machine guns roared to life simultaneously, unleashing a devastating volume of fire that caused the entire aircraft, a heavyweight weighing 27,000 pounds, to shudder violently backward under the recoil force. This relentless ensemble of armament, comprising 1,450 caliber machine guns, firing armor-piercing incendiary rounds at a combined rate approaching 200 rounds per second, fashioned an unstoppable cone of destruction. No ground target within this cone could stand against such a relentless barrage. Each and M2 machine gun was loaded with a carefully linked belt of ammunition, streaming M2 ball bullets, M1 incendiaries, and M8 armor-piercing incendiary rounds, an optimization refined through 3 long years of combat experience across the Pacific Theater. This meticulous ammunition combination proved highly effective, maximizing destructive potential with each burst. The projectiles from these guns sped toward their target at an incredible speed of approximately 2,900 feet per second. Sergeant Major Nakamura, standing guard in his truck, had no real chance to react to the deadly onslaught. In a mere 1.2 seconds, 14 50 caliber rounds plowed through his vehicle, igniting the depot's exposed artillery shells. The resulting explosion was colossal. The truck, massive, weighing 6 tons, was propelled upward by the force of the blast, soaring about 15 feet into the air. Flames and dense smoke billowed upward, reaching heights of approximately 300 feet. The blast wave from this conflagration cascaded through the convoy, knocking down soldiers who had swiftly jumped from their vehicles in panic, attempting to escape toward the safety of nearby trees. Meanwhile, shrapnel from the explosion sliced through the next 3 trucks in line, each laden with loads of rice, ammunition, and other supplies, set ablaze as the fiery fragments tore through the cargo and the vehicle's hulls. In the 4th truck, Private First Class Hiroshi Tanaka watched helplessly, his body frozen in place at the terrifying spectacle unfolding before him. He saw the aircraft's nose illuminated suddenly with the flashes of all 14 machine guns firing in unison, forming what appeared to be a solid, unbroken bar of searing flame running across the entire front of the aircraft. This extraordinary destructive power from the A26B was due to the precise synchronization of the 14 guns, all aimed at an exact convergence point. This meticulous alignment had been achieved through careful bore sighting and harmonization at a convergence distance of 1,000 feet. Consequently, at Captain Mitchell's attack altitude of 400 feet, the streams of bullets from all 14 guns combined to produce an oval-shaped pattern approximately 30 feet in width and 15 feet in height. This convergence zone was densely saturated with an astonishing weight of about 198 pounds of projectiles falling upon each second. A relentless, unyielding tentacle of destruction directed at any target within its reach. The Japanese defenders had never before encountered such a concentrated and synchronized volume of automatic weapon fire emanating from a single aircraft. Even heavily armed fighters like the formidable Republic P-47 Thunderbolt, which carried only 850 caliber guns, fell short of this level of firepower. Most American fighters operating in the Pacific Theater mounted a maximum of 6 such weapons, making the A-26B's firepower an overwhelming, unprecedented force in aerial combat. Lieutenant Colonel Yamamoto, faced with the oncoming barrage, attempted to organize a response, though his efforts to coordinate return fire from his 2 anti-aircraft guns were rendered almost pointless in the face of such overwhelming, precisely synchronized assault. The leading gun truck encountered devastating interference, absorbing a barrage of 47 hits across its ammunition-ready racks before its crew could even manage to traverse their weapon for a return shot. This relentless fusillade ignited a sympathetic explosion within the vehicle, instantly claiming the lives of all 4 gunners aboard and reducing their painstakingly prepared defenses to a blazing inferno in a matter of moments. Meanwhile, the 2nd gun truck, stationed closer to the center of the convoy, faced its own harrowing ordeal. Despite its brave attempts to fend off the attacking aircraft, it was struck with tremendous force, firing a mere 17 rounds before the assaulting plane's formidable attackers brought down destruction on it in a catastrophic flash. Within less than a second, specifically under a span of just 0.8 of a second, bullets of 9,350 caliber tore through the mountings, inflicting lethal wounds not only on the gun operator, but also on the truck's engine block itself. Private Yukio Sato, the soldier commanding the 2nd machine gun position, had just enough time to register the approaching disaster. As he watched, the nose of the American aircraft suddenly seemed to explode with an intense burst of light, an awe-inspiring, almost otherworldly brilliance, before his position was obliterated in a ferocious cascade of machine gun fire from 14 synchronized weapons. The concentrated onslaught drained the vehicle of its structural integrity, leaving nothing behind but wreckage and smoke. Turning to the aircraft itself, the Mitchell B-26, designated as the A-26B, was powered by a formidable pair of Pratt & Whitney double Wasp engines, each generating 2,000 horsepower. This extraordinary power gave the aircraft exceptional speed and unbelievable climb capability, enabling it to perform what American pilots had come to refer to as one-pass-and-haul-ass attacks. Such maneuvers were carefully developed to help pilots minimize exposure to Japanese anti-aircraft defenses, which had become increasingly lethal as the Japanese armed their supply routes with an expanding array of automatic weapons. The tactic involved approaching from high altitude, executing a steep dive to achieve rapid acceleration, then leveling off at a low altitude for a quick, concentrated firing run before bolting away at maximum speed, often reaching about 320 miles per hour before enemy gunners could react effectively. Since February of 1945, the 319th Bombardment Group had been rigorously trained in these tactics at the Columbia Army Air Base. Pilots learned to approach their targets with utmost caution, aiming to stay hidden until the last possible moment, before diving sharply and harvesting the aircraft's top-notch speed to deliver precise short bursts of fire and then swiftly escape. This technique proved invaluable against enemies who had increasingly fortified their positions with layers of automatic weaponry designed to clip aircraft from the sky. As Mitchell's swift A26B roared over the convoy at a blistering speed of approximately 320 miles per hour, flying at an altitude of about 400 feet, his crew, namely the navigator and gunloader, Second Lieutenant Robert Thompson, watched with keen eyes through the aircraft's side windows. The entire Japanese column before them seemed to shudder and disintegrate beneath a concentrated barrage of fire, an unstoppable flood of missiles and bullets turning the long, winding mountain road into what Thompson would later describe as a river of fire and twisted metal. Equipped with an ammunition load totaling roughly 6,000 rounds, the aircraft could sustain continuous firing for approximately 30 seconds, a harrowing but calculated window during which Mitchell kept the trigger pressed. In most engagements, pilots exercised restraint, firing bursts lasting only 3 to 5 seconds to prevent overheating and premature barrel failure. However, in this attack, Mitchell pressed the trigger for nearly 4.7 seconds, unleashing close to 930 rounds in a relentless stream. The intense hail of projectiles tore into the enemy ranks, transforming the hillside and along the roadside into a chaotic tableau of smoke, flames, and debris, essentially creating what Thompson would come to describe as a river of fire, obliterating anything beneath the aircraft's punishing firepower. On the ground, Corporal Masaru Watanabe, driving the 12th truck in the convoy, bore witness to the devastating impact firsthand. Recognizing the imminent danger, he threw himself from the cab just moments before a barrage of 21,150 caliber rounds tore through his vehicle, disintegrating its metal body and igniting the 5,000 pounds of aviation gasoline stored in drums at its rear. The resultant explosion ignited a massive fireball, consuming the truck in a blinding burst of flames that also engulfed 3 of the surrounding vehicles and set portions of the nearby forest ablaze. This inferno rapidly spread, forming a blazing wall of fire that effectively blocked the mountain road, trapping the rear half of the convoy in a deadly trap of flames and smoke. Lying injured in a nearby drainage ditch, with his uniform engulfed in flames, Watanabe watched during their extensive deployment in the Mediterranean theater of World War II. The unit accumulated an impressive record of flying a total of 515 combat missions. These missions were carried out using the Martin B-26 Marauder, a twin-engine medium bomber renowned for its speed and accuracy. Their efforts in the skies earned them 2 distinguished unit citations, a high honor awarded for precise and effective bombing operations. These citations specifically highlighted their successful attacks on critical marshalling yards located in Rome and Florence, disrupting enemy supply lines and logistics in key Italian cities. Leading this accomplished group was Colonel Joseph R. Holtz-Apple, who had assumed command of the unit in August of the year 1943. Under his leadership, the group underwent intensive conversion training at Columbia Army Air Base, where the crews learned to master the unique characteristics of the A-26 Invader. This aircraft combined remarkable speed, formidable firepower, and exceptional maneuverability, qualities that made it a versatile asset for ground attack roles. The training emphasized exploiting these features to maximize effectiveness against enemy positions and vehicles, preparing the pilots to employ the invader's capabilities in a variety of combat scenarios. The group itself was divided into 4 distinct squadrons: the 14th, the 30th 7th, the 38th, and the 39th. In May of 1945, these squadrons set sail from San Francisco aboard the USS General John Pope, embarking on a long journey across the Pacific. Their arrival at Okinawa occurred in the early days of July, coinciding with the initial phases of Operation Olympic, which was planned as the colossal invasion of Japan that would ultimately end the Pacific War. By that time, Lieutenant Colonel Yamamoto was grappling with the chaos of the battlefield. He was wounded, bleeding from multiple shrapnel wounds and partially deafened by the deafening explosions around him. Despite his injuries, he attempted to assess the situation by counting the remaining vehicles amid the smoke and flames, a difficult task given the chaos. Out of a total of 47 trucks that had made their way into a precarious mountain pass, only 8 remained operational after the relentless assault. The rest 31 were reduced to burning wrecks, while another 8 had been so heavily damaged that they had been abandoned altogether. Beyond the destruction of machinery, the toll on human life was staggering. In this single attack, a total of 143 soldiers had been killed instantly, and an additional 87 were wounded. The convoy's vital cargo, ammo, fuel, and food was largely destroyed in the fiery chaos, further compounding the disaster. The effectiveness of the attack was brutally illustrated in how swiftly and thoroughly the American aircraft could neutralize enemy assets. In a mere 4.7 seconds, a single A26B invader, equipped with 14 forward-firing, 50 caliber machine guns, had annihilated an entire Japanese transport regiment. This rapid and intense barrage demonstrated the destructive power American aircraft wielded and had a profound psychological impact on Japanese forces. The commanding officer of the Japanese 50th Division in southern Kyushu, Major General Toshiro Nagai, recorded in his diary on July 29, 1945, that the enemy's new attack aircraft, with their concentrated forward guns, had rendered daylight movement impossible for the Japanese. The aircraft systematically destroyed their supply routes and defenses, severely impairing their ability to reinforce and defend coastal positions against the advancing Allies. The introduction of the A26B Invader marked a significant leap forward in ground attack capabilities. The aircraft's potent armament of 14 forward-firing, 50 caliber machine guns represented a qualitative upgrade that Japanese forces had not anticipated or prepared for. The technical superiority of the weapon systems on the Invader, particularly the standard American machine gun of that era, gave it a decisive advantage over traditional Japanese ground defenses. Each machine gun fired projectiles weighing about 1.7 ounces at a muzzle velocity of approximately 2,900 feet per second, thus delivering around 13,000 foot-pounds of kinetic energy with every burst, enough to cause catastrophic damage to targets in its path. The armor-piercing incendiary rounds were capable of penetrating approximately 1 inch of face-hardened steel at a target distance of 500 yards, making them particularly lethal against fortified positions and vehicles. When firing in a synchronized pattern, such as during a coordinated attack, the destructive capacity of all 14 guns working together became vastly magnified, creating a devastating wall of fire that was difficult for any adversary to withstand. One notable instance of this formidable firepower was Captain Mitchell's attack on Lieutenant Colonel Yamamoto's convoy, an operation that vividly demonstrated the aircraft's destructive potential. His mission was just one of 22 sorties flown by the 19th Bombardment Group, also known as the 319th, targeting Japanese military installations and logistical routes between July 16th and August 14th, 1945. Operating from a base at Machinado, a location crucial to their operations in the Pacific, the group showcased the technological. During the fierce conflict over Okinawa, the formidable aircraft known as the A26B Invaders played a pivotal role in broad military operations across southern Japan and extending their reach into China. These heavily armed aircraft conducted a wide array of offensive activities, targeting critical military infrastructure such as airfields, railway yards, port facilities, and supply convoys. Their strategic aim was clear: to weaken Japan's logistical capacities and create chaos in anticipation of the long-expected invasion of the Japanese home islands. Their deployment was particularly significant given the proximity of Okinawa to Kyushu, which was approximately 350 miles away. This relatively short distance meant that the A26B invaders could launch their strikes deep into southern Japan, make swift attacks, and then return to base with ample leftover fuel reserves. This operational flexibility allowed them to spend extended periods loitering over target areas, hunting for opportunities to inflict maximum damage on vital installations and moving targets. In addition to their impressive offensive capabilities, the A26B was armed with an advanced suite of defensive weaponry that made it highly resistant to interception by Japanese fighters. The aircraft's defensive armament was notably sophisticated, comprising remote-controlled turrets located on the dorsal, upper, and ventral, lower aspects of the fuselage. Each of these turrets was equipped with twin M250 caliber machine guns, providing formidable firepower in all directions. The operation of these turrets was entrusted to a single gunner, Sergeant Thomas Anderson, who sat in a specially designated compartment located just behind the bomb bay. Anderson controlled both the dorsal and ventral turrets using a highly advanced periscope sighting system. This remote control setup allowed for precise targeting and rapid response, facilitating seamless tracking of enemy aircraft or threats passing through the aircraft's defensive coverage from above and below. The core of this innovative defensive system was the General Electric remote control mechanism, which enabled Sergeant Anderson to smoothly switch targets as they moved through the aircraft's protective zones. The system provided automated computation to account for parallax, the apparent shift in the position of an object when viewed from different angles, and bullet drop, ensuring accurate firing solutions even at varying distances. Despite its technological complexity and the maintenance demands it imposed, this automation meant the A26B could maintain continuous defensive coverage without adding the weight and drag associated with traditional manually operated gunner positions. The result was an aircraft that was not only capable of offensive dominance, but also remarkably well protected from interception by enemy fighters. One eyewitness, Private First Class Akira Yamashita, who was among only 12 survivors from the leading elements of Admiral Yamamoto's convoy, later provided a harrowing account of the attack during American interrogations. He described how the entire assault unfolded with startling speed, leaving little room for soldiers to seek cover. Yamashita recounted that the attacking aircraft emerged out of nowhere, diving uninterrupted from the bright morning sun that momentarily blinded the targets. Before any reaction could be mounted, the front of Yamamoto's convoy suddenly erupted in a storm of explosions and flames. The noise of the attack was unlike anything the survivors had previously experienced. A relentless, deafening roar that resembled a massive canvas being violently torn apart, rather than the sharp cracks of rifle shots or the stuttering bursts of machine gun fire. The sheer impact of the A26B's firepower transformed the convoy vehicles into disintegrating wrecks, overwhelmed by the sheer number of high-velocity projectiles. Men caught in their path were unable to escape, falling where they stood as the assault raged around them. The ferocity of the attack was fueled by the aircraft's armament of 14 forward-firing guns, a configuration that provided a significant leap forward compared to earlier fighter aircraft. This armament was directly informed by the lessons learned over 3 years of combat in the Pacific, where American pilots observed that Japanese vehicles and fortifications were often reinforced far more heavily than initial intelligence reports indicated. Standard fighter aircraft like the Republic P-51 Mustang or the Grumman F-6F Hellcat mounted 6-gun configurations with calibers of around 6.150, capable of destroying lightly armored vehicles and suppressing anti-aircraft positions. However, delivering such destruction generally required multiple passes, sometimes several, to effectively incapacitate hardened targets. In stark contrast, the A26B's array of 14 guns produced an astonishing 2.3 times greater firepower in a single pass. This dramatic increase in fire output significantly heightened the likelihood of target destruction, while reducing the exposure of the attacking aircraft to enemy return fire, thereby maximizing operational efficiency and survivability. The day following the lightning attack on Yamamoto's convoy, Japanese engineers from the 54th Independent Engineer Regiment were dispatched quickly to the scene. Their mission was to clear away the wreckage and carry out necessary repairs to the damaged roadway. Lieutenant Keiso Tanaka, who commanded this engineering detachment, later reported the extent of the devastation caused by the assault. The aftermath of the destruction painted a grim picture, so thoroughly obliterated that individual vehicles had become indistinguishable from one another, fused together through the intense heat generated by burning fuel and ammunition. The terrain itself bore signs of widespread devastation, with the road surface marred by expansive craters left behind by countless exploding munitions. It was scarred further by the devastating impact of thousands of 75mm caliber bullet strikes, which pocked the asphalt and rendered the pathway unusable until extensive repairs could be carried out. More troubling than the physical destruction was the evidence that suggested a deeper level of intelligence behind the assault. Tanaka, a keen observer and officer, noted that the precise targeting and concentrated nature of the attack indicated that American forces possessed detailed, almost exact, knowledge of Japanese convoy routes and operational schedules. The level of accuracy was too refined to be the result of mere luck or guesswork, implying a highly sophisticated intelligence apparatus at work. By July of 1945, American intelligence had advanced remarkably, utilizing a combination of technological and human sources to assemble a comprehensive picture of Japanese military movements. Signals intelligence, captured through intercepted Japanese radio communications, played a critical role, providing timely and detailed information. Aerial reconnaissance conducted by specialized F-13 photo reconnaissance versions of the B-29 Superfortress contributed crucial visual intelligence, improving surveillance and targeting accuracy. Furthermore, contributions from Filipino and Chinese guerrilla fighters augmented the intelligence picture, creating an intricate mosaic of Japanese troop and convoy movements across the region. Major William Harrison, serving as the intelligence officer for the 319th Bombardment Group, maintained meticulously detailed maps that charted Japanese supply routes across the island of Kyushu. These maps were updated daily based on reports from the headquarters of the 7th Air Force, giving American planners the ability to anticipate Japanese convoy movements with remarkable precision. This granular intel enabled the United States to predict both the timing and likely locations of Japanese transports, maximizing the effectiveness of attack missions by striking when convoys were most vulnerable. During the 3 weeks of intense combat operations leading up to Japan's surrender, the specific tactical advantages of the American A26B Invader became more sharply evident. The aircraft's high cruising speed of 322 miles per hour vastly outpaced the older aircraft it replaced, such as the A-20 Havoc, which traveled at only approximately 275 miles per hour. This speed differential meant that Japanese anti-aircraft defenses had significantly less time to react and target incoming aircraft, reducing their hit probability and increasing the survivability of the invaders. The A-26B Invader was powered by twin Pratt & Whitney R-2800 engines, an iconic power plant also employed in the famed Republic P-47 Thunderbolt and Grumman F-6F Hellcat fighters. Renowned for their robustness and durability, these engines had repeatedly demonstrated their capacity to withstand the rigors of wartime combat, often returning aircraft to base with severe engine damage, such as a single engine shot out while the other remained operating under heavy strain. This reliability alone made the Invader a formidable asset in the skies. Among those observing the evolving threat was Master Sergeant Jiro Kawasaki, commanding a Type 962 50 caliber anti-aircraft battery stationed near Miyazaki. He reported with confidence that the new American bombers were effectively immune to conventional manual anti-aircraft fire. Because they approached at high altitude and dive-bombed at speeds exceeding 500 kilometers per hour, Kawasaki noted that their targets were unreachable with standard anti-aircraft guns. By the time their gunners could traverse their weapons and attempt to track these fast-moving targets, the aircraft had already completed their attack run and were ascending away at maximum throttle. The concentrated firepower of the invaders' forward armament was so relentless that any position targeted was often obliterated before it could return effective fire. The psychological impact of the invaders' attacks was equally profound. The distinctive and terrifying sound of 14 synchronized 20mm machine guns firing in unison, often described by Japanese survivors as a ripping or tearing noise, could be heard over the tumult of explosions and the roar of engines. This deafening noise, combined with the destructive precision of the attacks, instilled terror within Japanese transport units attempting to move supplies and personnel. Colonel Masahiro Fujiwara, who was in charge of logistics for Japan's 16th Area Army in Kyushu, understood that the psychological terror inflicted by the invaders' relentless assaults played a crucial role in breaking the morale of Japanese forces, in addition to the physical destruction they wrought. During the tumultuous final months of World War II, a series of historical events unfolded that would change the course of human history in profound ways. In the course of isolating the experiences of Yushu, it was noted during post-war interrogations that by early August of 1945, the morale and resolve of Japanese truck drivers had markedly deteriorated. Many of these drivers, faced with the imminent threat of American air raids and the destructive power unleashed upon their homeland, began to refuse to operate their vehicles during daylight hours. This was not merely a reluctance, but a form of silent resistance. Numerous drivers chose to abandon their duties altogether, rather than confront what was almost certain death from relentless Allied bombing campaigns. The atmosphere of fear and impending doom had effectively eroded the once steadfast willingness of these workers to carry out their essential tasks under enemy skies. A watershed moment occurred on the 9th of August, 1945, an event that would etch itself into the collective memory as one of the most momentous and sobering in human history. During their return from a specific bombing mission targeting the Kanoya airfield in southern Kyushu, personnel from the U.S. Army's 319th Bombardment Group observed a phenomenon that would forever alter their understanding of warfare and its devastating potential. As they flew over Nagasaki, they saw the emergence of a towering, ominous cloud, a colossal mushroom-shaped figure steadily ascending into the atmosphere. Captain Mitchell, who was flying his 23rd combat mission in the Pacific Theater at that time, vividly recalled the scene. "We were at approximately 12,000 feet when we saw this enormous cloud rising to the northwest. It must have been up to 40,000 feet high and still climbing." At that moment, neither he nor his crew could grasp the true nature of this cloud. It was unlike anything they had ever witnessed before, an awe-inspiring and terrifying spectacle that hinted at the unprecedented destructive power that had been unleashed. This extraordinary event proved to be one of the final chapters of World War II. Only 6 days after that ominous plume soared into the sky, Japan announced its surrender, formalized on August 15th of 1945. The shock and aftermath of this moment marked the beginning of a new era of human history, one in which the potential for destruction had been forever amplified by scientific and technological breakthroughs. Turning our gaze to the advancements in military technology leading up to the war's end, it is essential to acknowledge the remarkable evolution that culminated in the development of the formidable A26B aircraft, an aircraft whose firepower and design represented the cutting edge of wartime innovation. The roots of the A26B's destructive capabilities can be traced back to 1941, when the Douglas Aircraft Company responded to a U.S. Army Air Corps requirement. This requirement called for a new attack bomber that would replace the existing Douglas A-20 Havoc and Martin B-26 Marauder aircraft, both of which had served valiantly but with limitations in combat performance. A team of talented engineers and designers led by Ed Heinemann, Robert Donovan, and Ted R. Smith embarked on the task of creating an innovative platform that could be rapidly adapted for various mission profiles through major modifications, most notably by altering the nose section of the aircraft. The initial prototype, designated XA-26 and bearing the serial number 4119588, was equipped with a sizable 75mm cannon mounted in the nose. However, early testing soon revealed significant issues. The slow firing rate of this massive gun and its propensity to jam rendered it impractical for the high-speed, low-altitude assaults characteristic of Pacific Theater combat. These challenges prompted engineers to experiment with other configurations, integrating different types of weaponry, such as 37mm cannons and 50 caliber machine guns, in various combinations within the aircraft's nose. The culmination of this developmental process was the adoption of a solid 8-gun nose assembly, a configuration that was much more effective and became the standard for the production models of the A26B. This 8-gun arrangement, introduced during the production block designated A26B 50DL at Douglas's Long Beach facility, was capable of delivering an unprecedented volume of firepower within the confines of the aircraft's aerodynamic and weight constraints. When combined with the 6 guns mounted in the wings, 3 on each side, firing outside the arc of the propeller, the A26B could unleash a strikingly concentrated barrage of automatic fire, more potent than any other single-seat or dual-seat aircraft in the American arsenal. The production of this advanced warplane was a testament to the formidable industrial capacity of the United States during the war years. Between 1943 and 1945, Douglas Aircraft Company produced approximately 1,355 variants of the A26B in 2 heavily industrialized facilities, one located in Long Beach, California, and the other in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Each aircraft required an estimated 24,000 man-hours of painstaking labor to assemble properly, emphasizing the meticulous craftsmanship involved. The specialized nose guns alone demanded an extensive process. Precise boring. During combat, the risk of friendly fire incidents, accidents where soldiers inadvertently harm their own comrades, was a constant concern. An illustrative example hinged on the presence of adjacent guns operating during firing, which heightened the danger of unintentional injury among troops immersed in the chaos of battle. Such incidents underscored the perilous nature of wartime firepower deployment, especially when precise coordination was challenging amidst the intensity of combat scenarios. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Colonel Yamamoto, who was convalescing in the Kagoshima Army Hospital following injuries sustained earlier, took the initiative to document and communicate critical insights to the Imperial General Headquarters. In his comprehensive report dated August 3, 1945, he detailed an attack on a Japanese military convoy. This attack not only underscored the vulnerability of supply lines, but also illuminated a pressing issue: the growing inadequacy of traditional defensive strategies in the face of advancing enemy technology. Yamamoto emphasized that classical passive defense measures, such as using camouflage to hide assets, dispersing units to minimize targeting, and conducting night movements, had become largely ineffective. This was due to the enemy's overwhelming air superiority, coupled with aircraft capable of delivering concentrated, devastating firepower from the sky. Clearly, the era of relying solely on concealment and dispersal was waning when facing an opponent equipped with near-total control of the airspace. Given this grim reality, he recommended that all supply operations be halted during daylight hours to reduce exposure to enemy aircraft. Additionally, he urged the Japanese military to triple anti-aircraft defenses along major supply routes to better shield crucial logistics from aerial attack. Unfortunately, these strategic suggestions arrived too late. They could not be implemented before the final collapse of the conflict, illustrating the rapid pace at which the war's conclusion approached. The influence of the American A-26B Invader aircraft on Japanese military planning during the closing weeks of the war extended far beyond the immediate consequences of lost supplies and destroyed vehicles. Lieutenant General Osamu Yokoyama, overseeing the defense of northern Kyushu, conveyed to the Imperial General Headquarters the profound disruptions inflicted by relentless American air assaults, particularly those carried out by newly equipped, heavily armed attack bombers. These attacks systematically degraded Japanese transport capabilities, making it impossible to sustain the coastal defenses necessary for the anticipated American invasion. The destruction of trucks and other logistical vehicles meant that vital supplies, ammunition, food, and reinforcements could not be delivered to strategic positions or mobile units. Without the means to keep their defensive lines supplied, Japan's elaborate coastal fortifications, which had been painstakingly constructed along the expected landing beaches, risked turning into lethal death traps for their defenders. The human toll accumulated swiftly. The attacks of July 28 alone resulted in numerous casualties, many of whom bore wounds inflicted by high-caliber weapons. The injuries caused by 50-caliber bullets were particularly gruesome. The high velocity of these rounds often resulted in extensive tissue damage, sometimes necessitating traumatic amputations of limbs with little time for medical intervention. Furthermore, the incendiary properties of armor-piercing incendiary rounds compounded the horror, causing severe burns among the wounded. Many casualties succumbed to a combination of blast injuries, burns, and blood loss before adequate medical attention could be provided. The technological edge held by the American forces through the deployment of aircraft such as the A26B Invader, was merely one facet of their overwhelming material superiority in these final months of the conflict. By the middle of 1945, the strength of American air power had become staggering. Over 7,000 combat aircraft had been stationed at bases within striking distance of the Japanese mainland. Among them, 692 B-29 superfortresses spearheaded strategic bombing campaigns capable of devastating industrial centers and military installations far inland. Over 1,000 P-51 Mustangs and P-47 Thunderbolts served as escort fighters and attack aircraft, countering Japanese air defenses and striking ground targets. And now the specialized ground attack missions were carried out by the A-26B Invaders, operated by the 319th Bombardment Group. In stark contrast, Japan's aerial forces were significantly weaker. The Japanese could muster fewer than 5,000 aircraft of all types, most of which were being held in reserve for one purpose alone: kamikaze attacks directed against the incoming invasion fleets. These desperate, treacherous tactics reflected the dwindling capacity and morale of Japan's military aviation forces. The specific technical advantages of the N/M250 caliber machine gun, integral to the effectiveness of the A-26B Invader, contributed greatly to its lethal efficiency, transforming aerial attack capabilities and presenting a formidable challenge to the increasingly beleaguered Japanese defenses. Overall, by the summer of 1945, the technological disparities and strategic disadvantages faced by Japan underscored the overwhelming dominance of American air power, leaving Japanese military planners grappling with an increasingly declining capacity to resist as the final act of the Pacific War drew ever closer. The powerful firepower configuration of the 26B aircraft's forward-firing weapons was designed with a keen focus on maximizing concentrated destructive capability. This was achieved through a combination of a high rate of fire, outstanding dependability, and the availability of diverse specialized ammunition types tailored to engage various target types effectively. Among the arsenal of ammunition options, the standard M2 ball round proved to be a versatile and potent choice, capable of piercing light armor and penetrating aircraft skin at ranges surpassing 1,000 yards. Such armor-piercing capability made it especially effective against smaller, less heavily protected targets. Accompanying this was the M1 incendiary round, which contained a small but effective incendiary compound. Upon impact, this round igniting fuel tanks, ammunition storages, and other flammable materials, thereby causing additional damage beyond mere penetration. To further enhance offensive effectiveness, the M8 armor-piercing incendiary round combined two critical functions. It was fitted with a hardened steel core that enabled it to breach armored surfaces effectively, and it also contained an incendiary element capable of igniting combustible materials on secondary impact. This dual capability ensured that the round could, in a single payload, inflict structural damage while also setting ablaze vital supplies or components. During combat operations, responsibility for maintaining a steady supply of ammunition for the nose-mounted guns fell on the shoulders of the aircraft's crew members, notably Second Lieutenant Thompson Mitchell's navigator and gunloader. Their primary duty was to ensure that the feeds from the ammunition boxes remained unobstructed, thus preventing any jams or stoppages during high-intensity engagement. Each of the 8 nose-mounted 50 caliber machine guns, designated as the M2s, was supplied with its own ammunition box holding 400 rounds of linked belts. The feed system was designed with an intricate arrangement, and spent cases as well as links were ejected downward through designated chutes located in the bottom of the nose section. This tight routing of 8 separate ammunition feeds through the confined space of the nose required meticulous engineering precision and relentless upkeep to prevent malfunctions, especially in the demanding conditions encountered during combat. Preparing an A-26B for a typical combat mission was a demanding process, often taking ground crews at the 319th Bombardment Group's 438th Squadron around 4 hours. A significant portion of this preparation involved loading the extensive ammunition inventory and conducting thorough inspections of the gun systems to ensure full operational readiness. The complexity of maintaining all these components in peak condition was vital, given the harsh environment of the Okinawa campaign during the summer of 1945. The ground crews had to contend with the high humidity, corrosive salt air, and pervasive coral dust, all of which pose serious challenges to weapons system maintenance and reliability. Although the primary role of the A26B's weapon systems was offensive, delivering devastating firepower against enemy targets, its defensive capabilities, though secondary, were nonetheless substantial. Sergeant Anderson, the dedicated gunner aboard Mitchell's aircraft, operated both dorsal and ventral turrets through an innovative periscope system that automatically shifted focus between the two positions. This system provided seamless targeting as enemy fighters or threats moved across different angles of attack. Each turret was armed with two 50-caliber machine guns, producing a formidable array of firepower, with each gun loaded with 500 rounds. These turrets offered comprehensive close-range defense, covering all aspects of the aircraft's surroundings. Despite the relatively few Japanese fighters penetrating the Allied air patrols during their 3 weeks of combat operations, thanks largely to the aircraft's offensive dominance, the presence of these defensive turrets imposed a strategic disadvantage on potential interceptors. Enemy fighters had to approach from the front or other less defended angles, confronting the devastating front-firing guns that presented 14 guns firing forward in unison. This comprehensive defensive scheme significantly increased the aircraft's survivability, forcing enemy fighters into a more difficult and dangerous attack pattern. Maintaining the complex weapon systems of the A26B in operational condition under Okinawa's punishing summer conditions was an ongoing challenge for the ground crews of the 319th Bombardment Group. The combination of relentless humidity, corrosive salt air, and the fine coral dust that infiltrated aircraft systems demanded relentless effort and discipline. Every day, the armament specialists performed detailed cleaning, lubrication, and inspection routines to ensure optimal performance. Led by Chief Master Sergeant Ronald Patterson, head of the armament section of the 438th Squadron, the maintenance schedule was rigorous. Each gun had to be removed, completely disassembled, thoroughly cleaned, and tested after every 5 missions or 50 flight hours, whichever came first. These regular maintenance intervals were critical in maintaining the high level of readiness required for combat effectiveness in such an unforgiving environment. Japanese efforts to counter the American advance in the formidable A-26B included desperate, often clandestine measures. They attempted to employ elaborate camouflage for their supply routes, creating decoy convoys designed to mislead and absorb American attacks. Major Yoshiro Taniguchi of the Japanese forces orchestrated such efforts, aiming to complicate the Japanese Army's intelligence service once devised an elaborate scheme aimed at deceiving the advancing Allied forces, primarily by orchestrating false convoy routes. Their strategy involved using captured American vehicles coupled with dummy supplies to create decoy columns that appeared authentic from afar. The hope was that these false targets would serve two purposes. First, to mislead American forces into wasting valuable ammunition on non-essential targets, and second, to uncover patterns in their attack methods through the analysis of intercepted signals and intelligence. This plan was rooted in the belief that by misdirecting enemy reconnaissance efforts, the Japanese could buy precious time and potentially manipulate the American battlefield tactics to their advantage. Nonetheless, the Allied intelligence community, which boasted a highly efficient and vast network, rapidly uncovered these tricks. Their breakthroughs in signals intelligence, combined with swift aerial reconnaissance, meant that decoy convoys were largely dismissed, as the Allies concentrated their efforts on genuine targets identified confidently through reliable intelligence channels. The real threat lay not in these false routes, but in the actual strategic targets that the Allies pinpointed with greater certainty thanks to modern technological assets. Among these real targets was the strategic operation mounted by the United States 319th Bombardment Group, which utilized the innovative A-26B Invader aircraft. Although their involvement in combat lasted merely 3 weeks, their impact was disproportionately significant. This narrow window of intense operation contributed decisively to disrupting Japanese logistical chains in southern Kyushu to such an extent that by early August of 1945, Japanese supply and reinforcement movements in the area had been rendered almost entirely immobile. This blow to their logistics was further compounded by the simultaneous assault on Japanese coastal waters through extensive mining operations carried out by B-29 superfortresses, flying with the 313th Bombardment Wing. The meticulous laying of mines, combined with a relentless naval blockade executed by American submarines and surface patrol vessels, effectively strangled Japan's maritime supply routes. In concert with these offensive measures, American tactical aircraft targeted Japan's extensive rail networks, systematically dismantling crucial transportation hubs. Alongside these actions, the interdiction of land-based road transport was achieved with the deployment of the A26B aircraft, which played a vital role in isolating Japanese defensive positions from their inland supply bases. This multi-layered campaign of interdiction, sea, air, and land, essentially sealed off the Japanese forces in southern Kyushu, cutting off their access to vital resources, reinforcements, and supplies, thereby crippling their ability to maintain sustained military operations in the region. One of the most groundbreaking technological innovations integrated into the A26B Invader was the K-14 gun sight, a marvel of wartime engineering heavily reliant on gyroscopic computing. The K-14 system was designed to automatically calculate the precise lead angle necessary for hitting moving targets, dramatically increasing the aircraft's effectiveness in combat. Captain Mitchell, like most of his peers flying the A-26B, discovered that the K-14 gun sight was particularly advantageous when engaging targets exhibiting predictable movement along roads or railway lines. In such scenarios, the sight's advanced computer could accurately anticipate where the target would be in the near future, allowing for swift and precise firing solutions. The system projected an illuminated reticle onto a reflector glass positioned in front of the pilot's line of sight. This reticle was dynamically adjusted to account for the aircraft's speed, altitude, and angle of attack, ensuring that the aiming point remained accurate despite flying conditions. By mid-1945, American pilots had accumulated extensive combat experience, not only in the Pacific theater, but also in Europe and the Mediterranean, giving them a clear tactical edge over Japanese forces who had yet to master such technological advantages in their own arsenal. Many of the pilots assigned to the 81st Bombardment Squadron, part of the 319th Bombardment Group, had logged dozens, if not hundreds, of combat missions before deploying to the Pacific. Their prior experience often came from flying in the Mediterranean theater, where they had engaged German and Italian military targets under conditions that were frequently more demanding and unpredictable than those faced in the Pacific. This breadth of combat exposure, combined with rigorous training on the A-26B at Columbia Army Air Base, enabled the squadron's pilots, such as Captain Mitchell, to carry out complex attack profiles with exceptional accuracy, all while maintaining an acute awareness of the threat environment and avoiding hazards efficiently. A poignant and harrowing testimony comes from Private Tuishiwa, a survivor of the convoy that served as the target of Yamamoto's ill-fated attack. Ishiwa, who had been riding in one of the vehicles at the rear of the column, later recounted the catastrophe in his memoirs, describing in vivid detail the terrifying decisiveness of the American assault. According to him, the enemy aircraft descended from the sky with predatory grace, seemingly emerging from nowhere, and sliced through the formation with frightening precision. He vividly remembered the deafening roar, a sound akin to the very fabric of the world ripping apart, as the head of their convoy was immediately consumed by the operations carried out by the bombardment group in Okinawa, marked the pinnacle of American military experience in Pacific warfare, representing the culmination of years of preparation, strategy, and logistical coordination stretching back over 3 intense years of conflict in the vast Pacific theater. Throughout this period, crucial supplies, including aviation fuel, were meticulously delivered on a daily basis from tanker ships ferrying resources from home ports in California and Texas. Each of these ships played a vital role, symbolizing the logistical backbone of the Allied air campaign. For instance, the fuel necessary for a typical mission in the A-26B aircraft to Kyushu and back amounted to approximately 800 gallons, a volume that highlights the scale of support needed to sustain continuous operations across long distances. In addition to fuel, the supply chain provided an immense quantity of ammunition, millions of rounds of .50 caliber ammunition, delivered by specialized ammunition ships, supplied the firing power required for mission success. During the 3 weeks that the group was actively engaged in intense operations, the daily consumption of ammunition averaged around 40,000 rounds, a staggering figure that underscores the relentless and high-intensity nature of these attacks. Supporting this immense firepower, other vital spare parts, spare gun barrels, engine components, and critical electronic equipment were flown in by air from supply depots located in Hawaii and across the continental United States. These rapid replenishments ensured that the aircraft remained combat-ready, capable of executing their demanding missions with minimal downtime. Integral to the success of the missions was a robust intelligence apparatus that supplied the 319th Bombardment Group with a broad spectrum of vital information. This intelligence coverage was not limited solely to target coordinates, but extended to comprehensive weather forecasting, detailed enemy fighter deployment patterns, and the locations of anti-aircraft artillery positions. Captain James Wilson, who served as the group's weather officer, played a pivotal role in this intelligence effort. He received hourly updates from weather reconnaissance B-29 bombers, flying pre-designated routes over the Japanese home islands, enabling him to analyze cloud cover, visibility conditions, and wind patterns with remarkable accuracy. Such detailed and timely weather information was absolutely essential for planning low-level attacks, where even slight weather deviations could lead to catastrophic consequences for aircraft, such as being forced off course into mountains or clouds, often resulting in fatal crashes. The importance of precise weather forecasting became especially evident on August 1st, year of 1945, when the 319th Bombardment Group executed its largest and most ambitious mission to that point in the Pacific Campaign. A fleet of 32 A26B invaders was dispatched to target the Tuiki airfield complex in northern Kyushu. The raid, personally led by Colonel Holtzapfel, vividly demonstrated the devastating effectiveness of massed invader attacks against fixed enemy installations. Approaching the target from altitudes around 15,000 feet to evade detection, the formation split into 4 groups of 8 aircraft, each attacking from different directions simultaneously. This strategic maneuver saturated the enemy defenses and prevented effective coordinated anti-aircraft counterfire, overwhelming Japanese defenses with sheer concentration. The attack's ferocity was brutal and swift. Within less than 3 minutes, the combined firepower of the 32 aircraft, their noses bristling with 14 forward-firing 50-caliber machine guns, ransacked the entire airfield, reducing it to smoldering ruins. The attack resulted in the destruction of 43 Japanese aircraft on the ground, and the runway itself was rendered completely unusable, effectively neutralizing the airfield's operational capacity. Lieutenant Misao Kobayashi, commanding an anti-aircraft artillery battery stationed at Suiki, narrowly survived that inferno. The assault was described by him as apocalyptic, perhaps the most intense experience of his military career. He vividly recalled how the sky seemed to rain down metaled missiles as the coordinated attack surged from all directions at once, with each aircraft's nose flashing with the blaze of multiple guns firing in unison. The noise was beyond words. An unending chorus of roaring engines, gunfire, and the explosions of aircraft and fuel dumps set ablaze, effectively deafening those on the ground. The defenses of the Japanese military proved utterly helpless against this barrage. The 50mm guns, which might have been effective against slower or less heavily armed aircraft, were completely useless in the face of this high-speed, highly coordinated, and overwhelming attack. Lieutenant Kobayashi described the chaos vividly. Perhaps 30 rounds were fired from his position before it was utterly annihilated by concentrated fire from at least 3 attacking aircraft. Miraculously, he survived only because he was thrown into a drainage ditch by an explosion that momentarily spared his life amid the destruction. By this stage of the conflict, the cumulative psychological and moral impact of continuous and devastating American air assaults on Japan's war effort and national morale was impossible to ignore or underestimate. The relentless nature of these attacks, the destruction wrought upon critical military and industrial targets, and the undeniable demonstration of air power's military dominance contributed to a profound sense of despair within Japanese command and civilian populations alike. This downward spiral was vividly The appearance of the new American assault bombers, equipped with formidable multiple forward-facing guns, served as the unequivocal final proof that the defenses of our troops could no longer keep pace with the rapidly advancing superiority of American military material. These aircraft, especially the groundbreaking A26B Invader, embodying a new era of tactical aerial combat, showcased not only overwhelming firepower, but also a level of resilience and design ingenuity aimed at survivability on the battlefield. Our soldiers, already weakened by the devastating effects of malnutrition and widespread disease, found their fragile fighting spirit dwindling even further as their courage was systematically eroded by the sight of entire convoys, hastily assembled and desperately weak, being obliterated in seconds by the swift and precise attacks of a single American aircraft. Such scenes, once unthinkable just half a year earlier, became disturbingly commonplace, prompting many combatants to consider surrender as their only remaining option, a thought that would have been unimaginable in the earlier, more hopeful days of the conflict. The specifications of the A26B Invader exemplified cutting-edge technological innovation, far surpassing just its impressive array of armaments. Its structural design was a testament to thoughtful engineering, aimed explicitly at withstanding extensive battle damage. Redundant control systems ensured that even if one component failed, the aircraft could still be piloted effectively. Self-sealing fuel tanks significantly reduced the risk of catastrophic fires, and armor plating around the crew compartment provided a vital shield against enemy fire. The pilot was seated behind a robust armor plate weighing approximately 64 pounds, capable of halting the penetrating force of 50 caliber rounds, protective withstandings that often proved decisive in survival during intense firefights. Protective armor windows composed of specialized glass also minimized dangers from the shrapnel and fragments that frequently rained down during aerial combat. Moreover, the twin-engine configuration of the aircraft was instrumental in its survivability. Should one engine be damaged in the chaos of battlefield conditions, the Invader could still return safely to base on its remaining power, often saving the lives of crews during numerous dangerous missions. The grueling reality of maintaining the A26B in these harsh operational environments was vividly recalled by Maintenance Sergeant Carl Peterson of the 438 Squadron, who chronicled in his diary the countless difficulties faced at the primitive and often punishing Maconato airfield. The pervasive coral dust, which infiltrated virtually every part of the aircraft, posed a constant threat to operational readiness, particularly to the gun mechanisms, which required daily dismantling and thorough cleaning. Sometimes this work had to be repeated twice in a single day following a sortie, illustrating the relentless nature of maintaining these machines under such adverse conditions. Humidity was another relentless adversary. Within hours, any exposed metal parts would succumb to corrosion, necessitating relentless efforts to protect and preserve vital components. To mitigate some of these issues, makeshift canvas shelters were fashioned over the aircraft, offering limited protection against the corrosive effects of moisture and dust. The maintenance crews, often unsung heroes, understood all too well how numerous hours of diligent, meticulous work underpin each single hour of flight, a continuous battle against time, environment, and wear. Although rudimentary by later standards, the radar and electronic systems fitted into the A26B represented true cutting-edge technology for the year 1945. The aircraft was outfitted with a sophisticated N/APN-1 radar altimeter, a device crucial for providing precise altitude readings during low-level attack runs. Information vital for maintaining the ideal attack profile while mitigating the risk of crashing into obstacles or terrain. Secure communication was facilitated through the SCR-522 VHF radio, which allowed pilots to maintain effective contact with neighboring aircraft and ground control stations, coordinating their efforts seamlessly. The inclusion of the SCR-695 identification friend or foe transponder was a strategic measure designed to prevent accidental bombings of Allied units amidst the crowded skies over Okinawa and southern Japan. This technological safeguard proved invaluable in reducing friendly fire incidents during crowded airspace operations. Major Harrison, the intelligence officer of the 319th Bombardment Group, spearheaded the development of innovative techniques for assessing bomb damage. notably utilizing K-17 aerial cameras mounted on some A26Bs. These cameras, auto-triggered simultaneously with the firing of the aircraft's guns, offered a visual record of each attack, capturing the destruction in real time. Analyzing the footage produced, intelligence personnel could determine the effectiveness of different attack profiles, bomb loads, and ammunition types. The evidence captured during the attack on Yamamoto's convoy was stark and compelling. Segmented photographic frames displayed trucks torn apart under a hailstorm of anti-vehicle rounds, illustrating in vivid clarity the destructive power of concentrated 50 caliber fire on soft-skinned targets. This visual documentation not only validated tactical approaches, but also contributed to refining future attack tactics. In the summer of 1945, the human dimension of the air war over Japan extended beyond the pilots and ground crews directly involved in combat. It encompassed hundreds of others: officers, logistical personnel, and support staff. During the chaotic and tragic period of World War II, countless innocent Japanese civilians found themselves caught directly in the destructive crossfire of relentless American military assaults. One eyewitness account comes from Mrs. Akiko Tanaka, a humble farmer's wife living near a mountain pass that became infamous for a devastating attack. She vividly remembered that day, describing the thunderous noise as something terrifying and continuous, echoing like an unending roll of thunder that seemed to shake the very earth beneath her feet. Her account detailed how suddenly this deafening noise was punctuated by violent explosions, followed by raging fires that lit up the sky. The inferno, fueled by the dense forests surrounding their home, raged uncontrolled for 3 entire days, leaving destruction in its wake. The lingering scent of death and burnt flesh permeated the air for weeks after, a haunting reminder of the massive loss. In the aftermath, rescue teams and villagers tirelessly combed through the charred landscape, discovering bodies scattered over miles and miles. Many of these victims had been burned so severely that identifying them was impossible, their remains reduced to mutilated, unrecognizable forms. The old-timers in the village claimed that what had happened felt like a hellish demon invasion had been unleashed upon them. Such was the scale of terror and devastation they experienced firsthand. Meanwhile, on the other side of this brutal conflict, Technical Sergeant David Murphy, serving as the crew chief for a Mitchell aircraft, took immense pride in his diligent maintenance of what he considered to be the most advanced and effective A26B attack bomber in their entire squadron. He often remarked that their aircraft was a remarkably intricate and sophisticated machine, packed with multiple guns, advanced electronic systems, and armor enhancements. The nose guns in particular required constant, meticulous care. They needed to be regularly adjusted and calibrated to ensure they functioned precisely and reliably during combat missions. The squadron had developed numerous modifications to optimize the aircraft's performance, such as installing additional cooling vents to prevent overheating of the gun barrels during prolonged fire, and reinforcing the ammunition feed chutes to prevent jams or failures at critical moments. After each sortie, the crew meticulously examined the bomber, inspecting her from nose to tail, searching everywhere for any damage or wear that might compromise her effectiveness on subsequent missions. This relentless attention to detail reflected the extraordinary technological strides made between the earlier Douglas A-20 Havoc and the later far more capable A-26B Invader, a tangible demonstration of the rapid advancements in American military aircraft design during the war. While the A-20 had been one of the early effective attack aircraft, armed with 6 forward-firing 50 caliber guns, it faced limitations. It only managed to reach a top speed of approximately 275 miles per hour and had a comparatively limited operational range. Such constraints made it increasingly vulnerable to Japan's improved anti-aircraft defenses as the war progressed. In contrast, the new A-26B, capable of attaining a maximum speed of around 359 miles per hour and equipped with 14 forward-firing guns and enhanced armor, marked a quantum leap forward. It represented an entirely new level of ground attack power that caught Japanese forces off guard, unprepared for the level of threat it posed. One account from a Japanese fighter pilot, Captain Hiroshi Ada, offers a stark perspective on the combat encounters with these formidable American aircraft. Flying a Nakajima Ki 84Ha-0 base out of Koya Airfield, Hiroshiyata engaged with a formation of A26B bombers on August the 5th, 1945. He vividly recalled that he had initially mistaken one of the bombers for a solitary enemy, separated from the others, and dove aggressively to attack. But as he drew closer, aiming his guns, he was suddenly overwhelmed by the sight of tracer rounds streaming from the bomber's remote turrets, clear evidence of the aircraft's heavy defensive armament. The bomber's tail seemed to erupt with a spray of gunfire, forcing the Japanese pilot to break off his attack abruptly. In the process, he sustained multiple hits to his engine, causing him to ascend away from the combat zone, trailing smoke from his damaged aircraft. As he fled, he watched in horror as the bomber's nose lit up, unleashing a fierce strafing attack on a train traveling below. The relentless concentration of fire from the bomber was unlike anything Hiroshiyata had ever witnessed. It appeared to reduce the entire train, cargo, engine, and carriages into a roaring inferno in an instant, as if the attack was engineered to annihilate everything in its path. Barely managing to reach his base, the Japanese pilot survived the ordeal physically unharmed, but never flew in combat again before the war came to its abrupt end. The psychological impact of these American aircraft was profound. The destructive power of the A26B extended well beyond its physical weapons. It served as a potent tool of psychological warfare, instilling fear and uncertainty in Japanese forces. Allied propaganda initially dismissed reports of this new bomber as exaggeration or mere propaganda hype, but repeated devastating strikes on supply. Throughout the turbulent final months of World War II, efforts to bolster the faltering morale of Allied forces endured, yet the challenges persisted, often leading to further deterioration of the spirits of those directly engaged in combat. Under these circumstances, the strategic orchestration of aerial operations became a critical element in maintaining momentum and ensuring mission success. Lieutenant Colonel Robert Anderson, serving as the operations officer for the esteemed 319th Bombardment Group, undertook the intricate task of overseeing the planning of complex missions designed to leverage the capabilities of the formidable A26B Invader aircraft. His role demanded meticulous organization. Every sortie needed to be carefully coordinated to optimize the aircraft's destructive potential, all while minimizing the inherent risks faced by the crews. This involved detailed cooperation with multiple auxiliary units, fighter escorts, notably consisting of P-47N Thunderbolts from the 318th Fighter Group stationed at Aishima, along with naval rescue teams positioned along the suggested flight routes and specialized air-sea rescue squadrons, all mobilized to swiftly retrieve any downed personnel should the worst occur. The impressive record of these efforts was demonstrated conclusively by the fact that, across 3 weeks of intense combat operations, the 319th Group managed to avoid any aircraft losses to enemy fire. Such a remarkable achievement was not incidental, but rather a testament to the comprehensive, precise planning conducted beforehand and the airborne dominance held by the United States by the summer of the year 1945. American air superiority was unequivocal, and it was manifested in the flawless deployment of precision-guided missions, ensuring minimal casualties and sparing the aircraft from enemy interception or destructive anti-aircraft defenses. Behind the scenes, the logistical backbone supporting the operational units extended across the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean, connecting the front lines to manufacturing facilities situated thousands of miles away in the United States. Critical contributions came from the Browning Arms Company plant and the High Standard Manufacturing Corporation, both located in Connecticut. These factories produced the high-caliber M250 machine guns, key weaponry for the aircraft, at extraordinary wartime rates, peaking at over 5,000 units per month. Likewise, the supply of ammunition was vast and meticulously produced in diverse factories, such as the Frankfurt Arsenal located in Pennsylvania and the Lake City Ordnance Plant in Missouri. Here, production lines were dedicated to manufacturing billions of rounds, including armor-piercing incendiary and incendiary types, which proved astonishingly effective against heavily fortified and mobile Japanese targets across the Pacific theater. Of particular historical interest is the post-war analysis conducted by Master Sergeant Takashi Fukuda, himself among the rare Japanese military intelligence officers to survive the conflict and subsequently contribute to the understanding of Allied tactics. His comprehensive review for the Allied occupation authorities culminated in a revealing assessment of American ground attack strategies. Fukuda's report emphasized that the A26B invader epitomized the zenith of American tactical aviation doctrine, an aircraft designed to marry formidable firepower with exceptional speed and enhanced survivability. He argued that this combination enabled the invader to neutralize any ground target with minimal exposure to the enemy, thereby establishing a new standard for aerial bombardment during the conflict. Fukuda Critical ascertained that Japan's inability to develop effective countermeasures against this kind of highly armed, fast-moving aircraft had significant strategic repercussions, especially in the final months of the war. The Japanese lacked the suitable tactics and technologies to effectively defend against or suppress the American ground assault, which contributed directly to the disintegration of Japanese logistical and operational capacities. This lapse was exemplified in the overall collapse of Japanese supply lines and military infrastructure. A pivotal moment in this turbulent chapter occurred on the 9th of August, 1945, when crews from the 319th Bombardment Group witnessed a phenomenon that would forever mark human history: the mushroom cloud over Nagasaki. During a scouting mission following an attack on the Kanoya airfield, Captain Mitchell recalled watching as an enormous, luminous plume rose to an estimated altitude of at least 40,000 feet. To some of his comrades, the spectacle resembled a volcanic eruption, but the magnitude and characteristic shape of the cloud betrayed its true origin. The crew's subsequent encounter with the devastating power of the atomic bomb brought an immediate and profound understanding. This was no ordinary weapon or campaign, but a new chapter in warfare and human conflict. Upon their return from a strike against enemy fighters on the ground, Captain Mitchell and his fellow pilots could hardly contain their astonishment as they learned about the explosive force behind the nuclear device. The war, they realized at that moment, was effectively over, having entered an arena far beyond conventional combat. The subsequent announcement of Japan's surrender, made publicly on the 15th of August of that same year, initiated a period of unprecedented transformation. Amidst preparations for what was projected to be the most extensive and ambitious operation yet, an integrated assault on various Japanese military installations, the 319th Bombardment Group stood ready for detailed planning and deployment, marking a turning point not only in the conflict, but in the course of human history itself. In the vicinity of Kagoshima, the preparations for a major offensive were reaching their culmination. A total of 40 crews had been briefed meticulously by Colonel Holtzapfel, tasked with executing a mission of maximum effort scheduled for the 16th of August. These crews had been training intensely for this operation, fully aware that it would be a decisive blow during the final stages of the conflict. However, just as the aircraft were being armed and fueled, meticulous, time-consuming procedures designed to maximize the chances of success, news suddenly arrived that Japan had surrendered. This news spread rapidly across Okinawa, where many of the aircraft were stationed, and somehow disrupted the carefully laid plans. The announcement of the surrender brought a complex wave of emotion among the crews. On one hand, there was a profound sense of relief. After months or even years of combat and constant danger, they had survived what might have been one of the most intense conflicts in recent history. Yet this relief was tinged with an unusual sense of anticlimax, an odd, almost surreal feeling, given the ferocity and relentless nature of the fighting they had endured. The culmination of their efforts had, unexpectedly, become obsolete before their aircraft even took to the skies. The legacy of the A26B invader extended well beyond its notable service during World War II. This aircraft, famed for its versatility and effectiveness, participated in subsequent conflicts, including the Korean War and operations in Indochina, contributing to military efforts into the late 1960s. Its influence went beyond just its combat record. The concept behind its design, namely a resilient, dedicated ground attack aircraft capable of delivering maximum firepower directly onto enemy targets, had a lasting impact on the evolution of military aviation. This innovative design philosophy informed the development of later aircraft such as the Douglas A-1 Skyraider and ultimately the Fairchild Republic A-10 Thunderbolt II. The latter, famously known as the Warthog, was equipped with a 30mm cannon capable of destroying modern tanks, reaffirming the utility of single-pass, high-precision firepower. From the devastating success of the Invader against ground targets, where concentrated automatic weapons fire delivered in a single, decisive pass often resulted in immediate tactical gains, military strategists derived core principles that shape close air support doctrines to this day. Detailed statistical analysis of the combat operations carried out by the 319th Bombardment Group from Okinawa highlighted just how remarkably effective the A26B was in its ground attack role. Across a span of 22 missions, conducted between July 16th and August 14th in 1945, the aircraft managed to destroy or cause significant damage to an impressive array of enemy assets, including an estimated 412 vehicles, 63 locomotives, 291 railway cars, and 43 aircraft on the ground. These destructive efforts also extended to various military installations and buildings of strategic importance. Remarkably, these accomplishments were achieved without the loss of a single aircraft due to enemy action. Although there were incidents, 3 planes suffered minor damage from anti-aircraft fire, and 1 was forced to make an emergency landing at Ashima because of an engine failure, these losses did not diminish the overall effectiveness of the mission. Following the war, Lieutenant General Masakazu Kawabe, the commander of Japan's Air General Army, tasked with defending against American air assaults, testified that the advent of the A26B Invader in mid-1945 represented a significant qualitative shift in American ground attack capabilities. Despite Japan's considerable military investments, the Japanese forces found themselves entirely unprepared to counter this new generation of aircraft. The effectiveness stemmed from the aircraft's high speed, formidable firepower, and precision, qualities that rendered traditional anti-aircraft defenses almost utterly ineffective. Previously, defending against enemy aircraft required large, cumbersome formations and extensive manpower, ineffective against a single aircraft capable of striking with concentrated auto weapons fire at high velocity. Now, a lone invader could accomplish what once would have needed an entire squadron, dramatically increasing the destructive potential per sortie. Coupled with Japan's overwhelming air superiority and the enemy's practically unlimited supplies of ammunition and fuel, the presence of these aggressive attack bombers made daytime movement on the battlefield itself a suicide mission. The personal accounts of the men who operated and maintained these aircraft imbued the technological narrative with human depth and emotion. Among them was Second Lieutenant Thompson Mitchell, whose navigator kept a meticulously detailed diary of their missions, a record that has endured beyond the war itself. On July 28, 1945, the crew successfully struck a convoy traveling through a mountainous region, producing destruction of remarkable extent. After their pass, the scene was engulfed in flames, with over 40 vehicles ablaze, a testament to the aircraft's destructive capability and precision in targeting enemy logistics and supply lines. The vivid descriptions captured in the diary reveal not only the raw power of the A26B, but also hint at the complex feelings experienced by the crew. Pride in their effectiveness, along with a sob. From the array of 14 forward-mounted guns, the sight was nothing short of awe-inspiring, resembling a relentless, solid cascade of tracer rounds streaking through the air like fiery fingers reaching out to seize whatever target lay beneath them. The sheer volume of firepower was a testament to the aircraft's formidable offensive capability, and it inspired both awe and terror in those who witnessed it firsthand. The opposing Japanese forces stood little chance against such an overwhelming display of aerial dominance. War, as everyone knew, was a brutal and savage affair. Yet in this particular theater of conflict, it was clear that the Allied forces were wielding a power that surpassed their enemies' defenses, at least for now. The scale of destruction and the ferocity of these assaults made it painfully apparent that, at least for the moment, the Japanese defenders were on the back foot, unable to mount an effective counterattack against the relentless onslaught. Amid these high-stakes operations at Makinado Airfield, The ground crews faced a host of daunting maintenance and logistical challenges woven into the very fabric of their daily routines. Operating the formidable A26B Invader aircraft on a recently seized Japanese airfield, they encountered not only the mechanical intricacies associated with the aircraft's complex systems, but also the difficulties inherent in maintaining a functioning base in a hostile environment. One of the most immediate issues stemmed from the coral-covered runways, adequate enough for takeoff and landing, yet notorious for generating clouds of coarse, abrasive dust. These clouds clung to engines, eroding components and necessitating frequent, painstaking filter changes to prevent catastrophic failures. Meanwhile, the scarcity of fresh water posed a constant threat to efficient engine cooling during ground operations. The engineers had to devise intricate systems of pipes and pumps, an elaborate recycling setup, to make the most of every precious drop of water. Power supplies for maintenance and repairs relied on portable generators, which hummed tirelessly day and night. The relentless drone of these machines added to the cacophony of noise on the airfield, blending with the roar of engines and the chatter of ground crews into a relentless symphony of wartime activity. Private First Class Kenji Morimoto, one of the fortunate few who survived the fierce anti-aircraft defenses attempting to intercept the invaders, provided an uncommon perspective on the capabilities of the A26B Invader. Morimoto recounted how his unit had spent years training to shoot down American aircraft, yet nothing in their preparations had truly prepared them for the lightning-fast assaults of the new bombers. The invader would materialize suddenly, like a specter emerging from the clouds, and then dive steeply from listening range altitudes at speeds that left their ground-based guns ineffectual. The barrage of fire from the aircraft's nose-mounted guns was devastating, decimating everything in its trajectory before anyone aboard the ground defenses could aim or fire back. He remembered vividly that during a single strafing pass, only he survived, a grim testament to the aircraft's deadly precision and firepower. The psychological toll on the anti-aircraft crews was equally profound. Many, overwhelmed and defeated by the sudden ferocity of these aerial assaults, abandoned their positions, unable to withstand the terror inspired by the invaders' relentless machine guns and overwhelming speed. The strategic situation involving the 319th Bombardment Group during July and August of 1945 stretched well beyond immediate combat. The Allied forces were actively preparing for Operation Olympic, the intended invasion of Kyushu, scheduled for early November of that year. Military planners projected staggering figures. More than 1 million American soldiers could be casualties in the initial assault, while Japanese military and civilian deaths could number several times higher. The systematic deconstruction of Japan's logistical, transportation, and industrial infrastructure by aircraft like the A-26B Invader was a crucial part of this grand strategy. Their aim was to cripple Japanese defenses beforehand, cutting off supply routes and isolating coastal defenses to ease the eventual amphibious attack, thereby reducing American casualties and increasing the likelihood of success. Sergeant Anderson, a gunner aboard Lieutenant Mitchell's aircraft, offered a detailed account of what combat operations looked like from the vantage point behind the remote turret controls. The missile periscope system took some getting used to. Its optical clarity and maneuverability were initially confusing, but once mastered, it allowed the crew to track targets seamlessly from top to bottom, providing a significant edge in combat scenarios. During these missions, encounters with enemy fighters were rare, as Japanese defenses were saving their fighters for the larger invasion anticipated to follow these strafing operations. When the enemy did attempt to intercept, they quickly learned the hard way that our turrets were well prepared. The sturdy aircraft's front armament, up to 14 powerful guns, destroyed the threat with ruthless efficiency. During the moments when the captain pressed the trigger, every part of the aircraft seemed to shudder under the force of the firing, and the tracers streaked forward like the fingers of a vengeful hand, reaching out to scour whatever targets lay below in destruction. The sheer destructive power of during the height of World War II, the production of the A26B Invader stood as a shining testament to American manufacturing prowess and industrial capacity. The assembly lines within the facilities of the Douglas Aircraft Company, located in Long Beach, California, operated tirelessly, embodying the nation's relentless war effort. At the zenith of its production, the plant employed over 40,000 workers, all working in shifts that never ceased, day and night, around the clock, so as to meet the ever-increasing demands of wartime sortie quantities. The assembly process itself was a marvel of efficiency and specialization. The lengthy conveyor belt extending nearly a quarter of a mile was fitted out with numerous dedicated stations, each designed to execute a specific task. These ranged from expertly installing powerful engines and sophisticated armament to meticulously integrating cutting-edge electronics and complex control systems. Each component's precise placement was essential, as even a minor mistake could compromise the aircraft's performance or its survivability in combat zones. Ensuring the highest standards of quality and safety, a cadre of highly trained inspectors scrutinized every single rivet, wire, and component that went into the aircraft. Their rigorous inspections aimed to certify that every invader leaving the assembly line conformed perfectly to strict specifications, since these aircraft would be expected to operate in the perilous and unforgiving environment of battlefield combat, where survival depended heavily on reliability and precision. The monumental effort behind this production was not merely about quantity, but also about quality assurance, which was critical to maintain the operational effectiveness of the air campaigns. In discussing the broader strategic implications of American air power during the war, historical military analyses reveal insights from notable post-war reports. For example, Colonel Tetsuo Yamamoto, a staff officer working at the Imperial General Headquarters, extensively analyzed the impact of relentless American air assaults on Japanese defenses in a comprehensive report after the conflict had concluded. Although he was not related to the convoy commander, Yamamoto's evaluations provided sobering evidence of the effectiveness of American bombing campaigns. One of the most significant factors he highlighted was the systematic dismantling of Japan's critical transportation and supply infrastructure by American aircraft, especially the new heavily armed attack bombers introduced during the summer of 1945. These aircraft had the ability to strike with devastating precision and speed, rendering Japan's defensive plans for key locations, such as Katugo, utterly infeasible. Without the capacity to relocate reserves, ammunition, or essential supplies, Japanese strategic defenses faced a crisis of impotence. Their once elaborate and formidable beach defenses risked being isolated or overrun completely. The concentrated firepower demonstrated by aircraft like the A26B Invader exemplified this new reality. What would have taken months to construct in terms of military infrastructure could be efficiently shattered within mere minutes thanks to the destructive capabilities of such aircraft. This shift in balance from slow, manpower-intensive defense to rapid machine-power disruption fundamentally altered the course and outcome of the conflict in the Pacific theater. The technological advancements integrated into the A26B Invader extended beyond simple weaponry. Communications and navigation systems aboard the aircraft represented the pinnacle of wartime innovation in 1945. Equipped with the STR-269 radio compass, pilots could reliably navigate even through adverse weather conditions by homing in on radio beacons scattered across their routes. This device provided a crucial navigational advantage, especially in targeting missions over enemy-held territory, where visual cues might be obscured or unavailable. Additionally, the aircraft was fitted with the BC-4 5.3 high-frequency receiver, an integral piece of long-range communication equipment, enabling direct contact with base operations on Okinawa from the air. Such capabilities enhance coordination, situational awareness, and command responsiveness during complex and dangerous missions. Furthermore, the aircraft's interphone system, though primitive by contemporary standards, played an essential role by allowing the crew members, the pilot, bombardier, and gunner, to communicate effectively despite the cacophony generated by roaring engines, gunfire, and rushing airflow. These communication devices, pioneering for their time during 1945, granted American air crews a valuable tactical edge. They facilitated real-time coordination, allowing the crew to adapt swiftly to emerging threats or changing tactical scenarios during their perilous missions. The human stories from the war also echo the fierce encounters faced by Japanese pilots fighting against these formidable American aircraft. Flight Sergeant Yoshio Ito, one of the few Japanese fighter pilots to have both engaged an A26B Invader in aerial combat and survived, recounted his experience from August the 11th, 1945. Flying a Kai-61 Haiyan, a Japanese fighter aircraft, he had been patrolling near Kumamoto when he suddenly encountered a twin-engine invader attacking a supply dump. Recognizing the threat, Ito dove from above and behind to intercept. In the classic attack approach, Ito closed the distance, aiming to position himself for an effective attack. However, as he drew nearer, the invader's upper turret swung around swiftly and opened fire with twin .50 caliber machine guns. The violent flashes of gunfire lit up the sky as bullets. The aftermath of relentless strafing assaults left behind a haunting landscape of grotesquely mangled bodies, with survivors often bearing the brunt of catastrophic injuries. The wounds inflicted during these attacks were often severe and widespread, involving deep lacerations, shattered bones, and devastating burns. Such injuries, particularly among those caught in the air raids, were commonly life-threatening, requiring immediate and life-saving interventions. Dr. Akira Suzuki, the chief surgeon at the Kagoshima Army Hospital, observed that the large-caliber bullets employed in these assaults caused injuries that far surpassed the trauma typically inflicted by small arms fire. These rounds frequently resulted in severe tissue destruction, rendering limbs beyond saving and necessitating swift amputations, merely to preserve the patient's life. The hospital's medical supplies quickly became a precious and limited resource amid the chaos of mass casualties. Supplies of morphine, essential for alleviating excruciating pain, antibiotics critical in preventing infections from deep wounds, and blood plasma needed for volume replacement, were rapidly depleted, leaving many wounded soldiers and civilians to endure their suffering without adequate pain relief or proper medical care. The overwhelming influx of injured due to air raids pushed the hospital to its limits, exposing how the relentless assault not only brought visual destruction, but also inflicted profound human suffering through scarce medical resources and inadequate treatment options. In the final days before Japan's surrender, a last reconnaissance mission was conducted by the 319th Bombardment Group on August 14, 1945. This mission was intended to assess potential Japanese military activity that might suggest resistance or continued hostility despite surrender orders. It marked the closing chapter of hostilities for many American airmen, who flew their final flights over a country that had endured years of devastating conflict. Captain Mitchell, on what would be his last combat mission of the war, led a quartet of A26B invaders into a low-altitude reconnaissance over the southern regions of Kyushu. With the aircraft flying cautiously and prepared for instant engagement, they kept a keen lookout for any signs of hostile forces or military activity. Remarkably, the flight encountered no signs of resistance. Instead, they encountered a landscape characterized by abandoned military airfields, deserted roads riddled with debris, and the scattered wreckage of prior assaults, all remnants of a defeated enemy. Their mission provided valuable intelligence, confirming that Japanese resistance was collapsing rapidly across the region. The conflict that had claimed countless lives across the globe was finally nearing its end. The defeat of Japan was accelerated by technological superiority, with aircraft like the A26B Invader playing a pivotal role. Post-war evaluations by the United States Strategic Bombing Survey emphasized the importance of tactical aircraft in crippling Japanese logistics and mobility. It was found that interdiction of ground transportation, particularly the destruction of vehicle convoys and railway traffic, was central to breaking Japanese resistance. Aircraft equipped with multiple forward-firing weapons, such as the formidable A26B, with its twin 1,450 caliber machine guns, proved remarkably effective in this role. Their concentrated firepower, unleashed in a single pass, allowed them to deliver devastating blows to enemy vehicles with minimal expenditure of aircraft and crew resources. This tactical methodology reduced the aircraft's exposure time to anti-aircraft fire, significantly lowering the risk to the crews while maximizing destruction of strategic targets. This reflected a clear evolution in aerial combat doctrine, favoring concentrated, precise firepower to break enemy logistics swiftly and efficiently. The success of these tactics carried enduring lessons for American military aviation strategy, lessons that would influence doctrine for many years thereafter. The destruction of Japanese logistical routes and supply lines was not merely a tactical victory, it was a strategic breakthrough. The systematic obliteration of supplies, transport vehicles, and equipment forced Japanese military commanders into a position of moral and practical dilemma. Faced with the relentless destruction of their supply chains, they had to choose between defending coastal areas against potential invasion forces marooned inland or reallocating resources to try and protect interior positions, which were increasingly cut off and immobilized. The destruction in a single, swift 4.7-second burst from an A26B's 14 powerful guns, which obliterated 47 trucks, exemplified the scale of this logistical collapse. Such an attack was not merely the loss of these vehicles, it symbolized the disintegration of Japan's ability to sustain its military efforts. Without mobilization and transportation, military units could not be reinforced or resupplied, and entire campaigns could be effectively stalled. This decisive blow disrupted the entire Japanese war effort, emphasizing the importance of effective tactical bombing and ground attack strategies. Meanwhile, from a perspective outside American operational circles, Squadron Leader Frank Mitchell of the Royal Air Force offered keen insights into the impact of the American approach. As an observer attached to the 319th Bombardment Group, Mitchell provided an external, professional assessment of what he considered extraordinary. Having seen European air combat firsthand, Mitchell noted that in terms of sheer firepower, the American A26B Invader was astonishing. In Europe, the British Typhoon fighter bomber, with its 420mm cannon, was the formidable firepower showcased by this aircraft, combined with its exceptional precision, transformed the nature of aerial combat during the closing stages of the war. The United States adopted a strategic doctrine centered around overwhelming force delivered in swift, decisive strikes, a methodology that significantly minimized the exposure and losses faced by their attacking aircraft. This approach not only aimed to destroy critical targets efficiently, but also sought to ensure the safety of the crews involved in such dangerous missions. The lessons derived from these tactics proved invaluable and were carefully shared with the Royal Air Force. This knowledge helped shape the evolution of British aerial tactics, allowing them to refine their own doctrines based on the demonstrated effectiveness of the American method. The technological prowess of the aircraft, notably the A26B Invader, which was put on display in the summer of 1945, was far more than an example of cutting-edge engineering and industrial capability. It signified the culmination of nearly 3 years of intense combat experience accumulated in the Pacific Theater. Over those years of brutal jungle warfare, American forces meticulously learned through bitter trial and error just how vital speed, firepower, and durability are when executing ground attack missions. From the earliest days of development, every aspect of the A26B was designed to address the shortcomings identified during combat. For example, modifications like the increased canopy provided pilots with significantly improved visibility, an essential feature when engaging fast-moving ground targets. The armament also saw substantial upgrades, most notably the implementation of a synchronized array of 14 machine guns, each aimed at obliterating enemy formations with ruthless efficiency. These improvements were not arbitrary, but were directly informed by combat experience, aiming to create an aircraft finely tuned to its main mission, neutralizing Japanese ground forces while ensuring minimal risk to its crew. As the final days of hostilities in the Pacific drew near, the men of the 319th Bombardment Group gathered at Maconato Airfield to mark their moment of triumph. They celebrated not only their survival after more than 3 weeks of relentless operations, but also mourned the comrades they had lost on previous campaigns, notably in the Mediterranean theater. During their brief but intense operational period in the Pacific, the A-26B Invader proved itself as perhaps one of the most effective ground attack aircraft of the entire conflict. Its unmistakable nose, lined with an array of gun barrels, conjured a sense of fear and awe. It could unleash a devastating barrage with all 14 machine guns, devastating entire columns of Japanese troops in a single, lightning-fast pass. This incredible burst of firepower exemplified the sheer lethality and tactical advantage offered by the aircraft, serving as a stark reminder of how far modern warfare had progressed. In just 22 missions over a span of 3 weeks, a single group operating these aircraft inflicted damage that in previous conflicts might have required whole armies to achieve. The concentrated, synchronized fire from its numerous machine guns, delivered at extremely high velocities, revolutionized the concept of tactical air power. Despite the unwavering courage and resolve of Japanese forces, they found themselves powerless against such overwhelming technological superiority. A poignant testament to the aircraft's destructive capacity was demonstrated in the blazing wreckage left behind after the destruction of Lieutenant Colonel Yamamoto's convoy. In less than 5 seconds, a single A26B invader effectively eliminated an entire Japanese convoy, an achievement that epitomized the war's swift, devastating nature. This event stood as a symbol of the technological edge that had helped rapidly bring war in the Pacific to its conclusion, emphasizing the stark reality of modern warfare's efficiency. Ultimately, the brief but decisive combat record of the A-26B underscores how innovations in firepower, speed, and aircraft design transformed aerial combat and contributed decisively to the Allied victory in the Pacific theater.